Members, it's with great sadness that I'd like to ask the Senate adjourn in memory of Barbara Edelston Yaroslavsky, who was an icon, a mentor, an activist, and an inspiration who I feel so blessed to have called a friend. Her unexpected and untimely passing just 2 weeks ago still seems impossible. Every time I step on a Southwest flight, I think I'm going to see her on the plane coming up to Sacramento and get an opportunity to talk with her. She was so full of life, and I think so full of life that when I heard that she'd been released from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center on December 21st, after battling and apparently besting a devastating bout of West Nile virus, I assumed that she was undoubtedly on the mend. But it turned out, because of a blood clot associated with the virus from before, she ended up in therapy, and that ended up in a situation that caused her to be brought back to the hospital where she passed away. She was 71 years old. Her life was packed full of milestones and achievements to last many lifetimes, but her senseless and sudden death came so fast and so soon. And I will say, members, this has made me acutely aware of this ridiculous and devastating disease that is right in our midst. I mean, she was bit in her backyard in Hancock Park in Los Angeles by a mosquito that came apparently from next door, where there was an untended jacuzzi that had become a breeding ground for these mosquitoes. And next thing you know, she's been taken from us. Barbara was born and raised in Los Angeles. She met her husband, Zev, when he was working as a hall monitor at Los Angeles Hebrew High School, which is a kind of supplemental Jewish school that kids go to after they go to regular school. I went there myself, and she was at the front desk staffing at the American Jewish University, which is what housed the high school. They were married in 1971, and they raised two wonderful children, daughter Mina and their son David, who was just appointed to the bench by Governor Brown. Zev was elected to the Los Angeles City Council and eventually to the LA County Board of Supervisors, and I had the honor of serving as an intern on his staff for 2 summers, and that's where I really got to know Barbara well. And through it all, Barbara was by his side, but very much a yin to Zev's yang, and had a very different and a very effective personality that was so full of kindness and energy and determination. She also was very committed to Judaism, her Jewish and the broader Jewish community. She got very involved with nonprofits in that community. She got very involved with a whole slew of social service agencies, and got involved with some groups that advance the rights and health of women and families and children, not just throughout Los Angeles, but also throughout the state of California. And many of you know that she ended up serving as chair of our medical board for the state of California, and then went and served on the nursing board. And that's how I ended up getting to spend a lot of time with her, because we would sit next to each other on the airplanes up the Sacramento school bus, Southwest flights from Los Angeles, and we would sit together about every month and just talk shop. And the great thing about Barbara was that she was always so interested in everybody else. She wanted to know about my life, my family, what I was doing, and she was just a wonderful, kind mentor. And when I first heard the news about her death, my wife and I were driving from Pittsburgh into Youngstown, Ohio, and we both started to cry in the car. My wife recounted how incredibly kind Barbara had always been to her every step of the way. As I say, she had boundless humanity. She was one of the kindest souls that I've ever encountered. But she also had this fierce, limitless, imbued thirst for justice, and cared so deeply about others. And I think that was reflected in the turnout at her funeral at Temple Israel in Hollywood. Over 1,000 people packed into that sanctuary. Many of you were there as well. And we got to hear from so many speakers who spoke with such compassion and such passion about Barbara and her life. So I just want to say, as a heartbroken constituent and friend of hers, thank you, Barbara. We're going to miss you so much. And the broader Los Angeles community and the state of California are deeply in your debt.
Thank you, Senator Allen. Senator Stern.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to add my note of condolence. As a rookie in politics, Barbara had a unique ability to buttonhole you and tell you how it really was. Her ability to be unvarnished was a fierce kind of love that politics doesn't always see, because we're politic, and you like to perhaps conceal what you really mean sometimes to save people from uncomfortable moments. But Barbara didn't have time for that, because she was on a mission, and she was on a mission for people. Zev gave a very tough and huge eulogy for his wife, and he said her pastime was people. They met when she was actually running the switchboard, and he was the messenger boy back in high school when they had switchboards. I thought about that switchboard operation of just connecting this person to this person, right? You have to make the call, and how do you make that connection? That was her for the rest of her entire life. Was matchmaking and marriages, was finding ways to connect doctors who were immigrants to people who needed the help, to fast track them through the licensing process, but really because people needed to connect with people. So she was stolen from us, but that light's not out, and that bell can't be unrung. And Barbara will continue to be with us in that spirit and that unvarnished love that we miss all too much. So humbly adjourn in her memory.
Thank you, Senator Stern. Senator Hertzberg.
I'd just like to briefly join with my colleagues in adjourning in Barbara Yaroslavsky's memory. You know, each of us here on the floor have had rich lives in various capacities, and we've all had opportunities in our lives to meet people that have inspired us, people that have impacted us. I have known Barbara for decades, and as was mentioned earlier, she was indeed the yin to Supervisor Yaroslavsky's yang in the most significant way. And I just want to add, without being redundant, but a couple of issues. You know, number one is service. At every level of what that word meant in her life. Often someone is a partner to a public person, you know, there's a whole bunch of challenges, but she in her own right, beyond the board she sat on and everything that she did in the community, when she, before she passed, had a serious accident because she was tripped on a step because she went to someone's house to take care of them because someone had passed away and she was taking care of the family. The stories of people who she'd bring gifts to, and she would call the gifts not because they were their birthdays or there were holidays, she called them just because gifts, because she thought about someone and took care of them in so many ways, all across the communities, not just in her own community, although Judaism was so important to her. And I think that, so it really is about service, her character. I was with her so many times in so many circumstances, and often we see a public face of people and we see a different face in private that we often have the opportunity to see, and that wasn't the case with Barbara Yaroslavsky. And lastly, the unique partnership that they had in the yin and yang. They really were true partners. Zev Yaroslavsky was a dynamic force for decades in the city and the county of Los Angeles and so many areas of public policy, but I would suggest that Barbara Yaroslavsky was an equal partner in every aspect of that word, and I join in the memory. It is hard to believe that a mosquito, my brother told me, he used to work for Glory of Christ, it's the second case in the LA County, a mosquito. It really is the point that you made about, you know, this West Nile thing we don't even think about, but here it is in our own backyard to someone who we dearly love. I adjourn in her memory.
Thank you, Senator Hertzberg. Senator Jackson.
Yes, very briefly, I feel as that there needs to be a woman's voice to this, because Barbara made it very clear that women needed to stand up and speak out. And I had the honor and privilege of knowing Barbara. She was very active in Hadassah. And as soon as she heard that my mother had been a lifetime member of Hadassah, we became lifetime friends. And I think that sort of depicts, this was a woman who just loved life, loved people, loved trying to fight for justice and equality for everyone. And so I want to join my male colleagues. Barbara, your voice was heard, inspired me to get up on behalf of the women of our community, the women of the state. the Jewish women of Hadassah, and all the other groups that she was a key force in promoting and incentivizing and loving. A warm embrace to you, Barbara. We will miss you.